Do you know that this year marks the 50th anniversary of Gough Whitlam's dismissal? If you're a migrant or from a migrant family and you're like, who cares? Well, this is why you should care. Because you should never forget history, guys.
On the 11th of November 1975, the Governor-General dismisses the Whitlam government.
Proclamation which you have just heard read by the Governor-General's official secretary was countersigned Malcolm Fraser.
Even if you're a new migrant or you just recently memorized the Australian anthem and sang it at the Australian citizenship ceremony, this is the history that you weren't taught. And it's very important that you guys know because history always repeats itself. Because old mate Gough Whitlam, the OG Prime Minister, much respect to him, the same Prime Minister who gave Australia free uni and Medicare, he also on the same note rejected thousands of Vietnamese refugees, including families like mine and also thousands of families like yours who's watching this video right now. Because to quote him in historical context, he once said, quote, "I'm not having these African Vietnamese balts coming into the country," end quote. Which, by the way, balk in Aussie slang is a derogatory term for European refugees back in the days. Now, if you Google it, obviously that was behind closed doors. And I don't know whether you realize it or not, in that moment, it shaped a generation of unspoken trauma. And even if you didn't have to live through it directly, for example, you just arrived, or last 10 years you arrived, like, Gough Whitlam, who the heck is that person? But guys, you're watching this video, that sentiment has seeped into the foundation of what we call Australia now. Like, that stuff is in the air. Like, that kind of stuff, I was breathing that in since 1984 when I arrived in Australia. That stuff is already in my nervous system. And this is especially true if you're watching this and you're a migrant and you're like myself, first generation Australian, or for example, you were born here. I'm telling you right now, even when your mum was pregnant with you, that kind of trauma stress is actually seeped into your bones right now. So today in this video, yes, a bit controversial again, Q, to celebrate Gough Whitlam's 50th anniversary dismissal as a Prime Minister, we'll be unpacking today how this political rejection campaign has turned into money trauma in many migrants that came here in the 1900s. Here's what we're going to dive in today. Why first-gen Aussies grew up feeling like outsiders, even while benefiting from progressive policy. How Whitlam's refugee rejection and Fraser's acceptance still echo in our financial lives, even if Fraser's motives weren't purely humanitarian. And the invisible trauma first-gen Aussies carry into adulthood, especially around money, debt, and home ownership. And how our trauma-trained nervous system still don't feel safe even when the numbers say we're okay. And most importantly, guys, how to finally heal this so that we can finally invest with confidence and without fear. So for you folks who are watching this, if you ever felt stuck emotionally or financially, then this one is gonna hit home. So first off the bat, let's start with Gough. To most of the country and also to my parents, he's a labor god. I mean, think about it. 3 uni, universal healthcare, the Racial Discrimination Act. But here's the one part they forgot to talk about, especially in Australian history class. Because when Vietnam fell, guys, and refugees were pleading for safety, Whitlam said no. And it's only his own foreign minister back then, Don Woolsey, it was only him that urged him to accept him. And back then, behind cabinet doors, Gough flat out refused, and with venom. Like, let that sink in, guys. For those that are watching this that are from refugee families, you know, Vietnam War, whatever war that was related to those who are coming to Australia as a refuge country, this is about us, about our parents, about our families. Like I'm telling you guys, that part of history, that history books don't want to talk about, that doesn't display leadership. That actually displays fear. And it's that kind of decision that creates generations of quiet trauma. Trauma that I'm still experiencing myself. And I don't know whether you know this, but this quiet trauma actually builds up and festers in many of us who are from migrant families. Because most often or not, we were told to be grateful, to be quiet, to not make a single noise. I mean, my parents always say, hey, at least over here, we got free healthcare. Like, you should be grateful, right? And this is the part where I talk about another old mate, Malcolm Fraser. He is actually the Liberal MP who replaced Whitlam after his dismissal. Like, I don't know whether you guys know from history, Labour was the one that swung the door closed for refugee intake. Like the very party that you guys voted into power today, this was their dark past. And it was the Liberal MP, Fraser, that actually opened the door to immigration. And I gotta give credit where credit is worthy. Fraser back then, even against a lot of flack, he didn't care about optics, or maybe he did, but on a service level, it didn't look like he did care. Because under his party's rule, he did welcome the refugees, which is my people, into Australia. I really am thankful. I'm grateful. But it doesn't mean I go back and forget about history and what happened. Because even though I'm kind of grateful about Fraser and my family is grateful for Fraser, I sometimes think Fraser isn't the 100% humanitarian angel that my parents thought he was. Like, I don't know whether you guys know, but he was also aligned with Henry Kissinger. Well, the whole bloody Australian government was aligned with Henry Kissinger when Australia participated in the Vietnam War, right? Like, this is the Henry Kissinger that approved Orange Agent, or Agent Orange, and the whole, oh, let's invade Vietnam and the Vietnam War, right? Like, let's take a deep sit back and look at what the Vietnam War really is, right? And really look at it from hindsight. It was really less about fighting communism and was really more about propping up the French colonial power back then. Like, I mean, I'm grateful that Fraser allowed my people in, and you can somehow interpret that as a form of compassion. But if you look at it in a different way, maybe it was from guilt. And a lot of you might be scratching your head and go, hey, Q, what? Guilt from what? Guilt from what? We got your people in. Like, be grateful, dude. Maybe it's guilt for Australia's involvement in the murder of millions of our people. And the government back then only extended the humanitarian refugee visa only as a need to clean up the mess it helped create. And yes, I'm grateful. I don't want to sound entitled. I do want to say it did make a difference. But I'm saying we should be clear-eyed about history. For first-gen kids that are in Australia at the moment, like myself, like, I'm just trying to say we aren't risk-averse. We were trained to be risk-averse due to this sort of quiet trauma that is building in the background. Like, what I'm trying to say is we're very excellent at stacking cash, but because of this trauma that is involved in our family and in our nervous system, we're terrible at stacking assets, which I see a lot in migrant-born family clients. Like, this stuff is in our bodies, it's in our DNA. And I'm telling you right now, guys, you don't have to live through war to feel its aftershocks, right? The rejection from Whitlam, and then that side-eye treatment from Fraser's government that we got, like, that kind of like, oh yeah, we accept you, but then, you know, we really don't want you, but then we feel guilty because sort of like demolished your country, and, you know, you're here, but you're not white, you know, that kind of like guilt, trauma kind of vibe there, that echoed in my lounge room in 2003, guys. Like, I clearly remember when I was 19, right? 2003, right? Every time I mentioned the word like property or mortgage, or like I saw someone like my boss or my friend who bought a property, right? Very young, early, and I wanted to do the same as well. And when I said this around my parents, like, their whole energy would just shift, right? Tense, nervous, like somehow the government's treatment of them would rip away all this stuff that they got right now. Like, for them, they learned not to trust the system. Because for them, even though they didn't speak English when they came here, they weren't stupid, right? They knew that, yes, okay, well, Fraser welcomed us into the country, but that was only on the premise that OG Gough Whitlam refused us in the first place. And after I struggled through the argument to convince my parents, look, I am doing the right thing. I bought my first property when I was 23. And then when I was 25 to buy my first investment property after my first owner-occupied property, I received another round of fee-based reactions from my parents. Like, they'll be saying, like, oh, why are you buying another property? Like, what are you doing? Like you gotta get this all taken away from the government. Like, why are you doing this? You should just be grateful you're here, keep quiet, work 9 to 5, that's it. They looked me straight into eyes and said to me, son, why the heck are you doing this? And it was at that moment that I realized that was their fear. It wasn't mine. And somehow I inherited their fear. And to be honest, guys, that second property felt more emotionally loaded than my first one. Because right now, I wasn't just taking risks, I was stepping into territory my parents never ever dared to dream of. Like, to them, I was like flying too close to the sun, right? But you know what the blunt truth is? This is what happens when your family tree was rooted in both rejection and political betrayal. And my mum and dad, based on their rooted fear, they feared abundance because it feels unfamiliar. Like, somehow they confuse safety with playing small. So for folks like you who are still watching thus far, if you feel that fear still lives in you, and you're sitting there thinking, hey, well, Q, how do I actually break this pattern? How do I get out of this family-based rooted fear? I don't know whether you have a pen and paper right now, but I want you to pause this video and get a pen and paper right now. But the first thing that I did is I want you to unpack your family's origin story. I want you to, either you have your parents still alive or whatever it is that's related to your parents, maybe your brothers or sisters or siblings, right? Ask them this question. Just plainly ask them, what does wealth mean to you? Like, mum and dad, what does wealth mean to you? When I asked my parents that, they said to me, wealth means you just work 9 to 5, get a stable job, you have some savings, and you live until you're 60 years old. Like, write that down, right? And then on a separate column next to that, write down what does wealth mean to you. And back then I was like, yeah, I want to own, like, you know, 3 to 4 investment properties. I want to have a lot of savings. I want to have my own business. I want to have yada yada yada, right? Then I want you to then look at these 2 columns, the answers from these columns, right? One from your parents and one from yourself. And just notice the gap between these 2 ideas, right? One is stay safe, stay quiet, and just goddamn save money in your bank account. That's it. The next is have property, accumulate, build wealth, build generational wealth, right? And from that gap, as you can see from this diagram over here, I want you to realize how massive that gap is, right? How far that gap is. I just want you to notice the gap, and I just want you to sit with it, right? Just notice that your parents and you are separate people. Yes, you have the same blood, but you're separate people, right? And I just want you to have that idea rooted in your brain. That's it. It's like a seed. You're planting a seed that there is a difference. There is a gap. That's all I did, right? There is no magical formula, right? Like, I'm not going to give you a 50-step checklist of what to do. It doesn't exist. Like, there's no get-rich-quick scheme, right? All I did was to notice that gap, and that seed will one day grow into like, oh, maybe I should read more about investing. Maybe I should watch videos like this about investing. Not obviously my videos, other people's videos. I don't care what you watch, but just know that you have a gap from what they didn't teach you. And you just need to fill in that gap, right? But hey guys, again, I want to reiterate that this is a long process. It took me more than 20 to 30 years to heal myself from that childhood trauma, from that generational poverty mindset that my parents passed on to me, right? But however, for those that watch this video and it kind of makes sense to you and you do want to know more about accumulating property, I do suggest if you do want to have more of a one-on-one chat to me, like somehow my story vibes with your family story, I want you to either book a 15-minute strategy call or a 60-minute deep dive for me to design a tailored holistic lending solution for you where I can hook you up with my financial planners, my accountants, and my respected buyers agents for you to build an A-game team to build a property portfolio, for you to end a generational curse in your family and fill in that gap for you to generate generational wealth. But hey, if you're not ready, just hit the like button, hit the follow button, and smash the share button. Send it to your migrant mates or whatever. Or even if you're not migrant or you're just relating to this story, you're vibing with the story, just share it with your mates because knowledge is power. And yes, I am controversial, I'm contrarian, but this platform just requires a different story from another perspective. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm very grateful to be living in this country, but sometimes we just need to go back to the history books and look at it from a different perspective, because sometimes what history says in history books doesn't relate to how we're feeling, right? And sometimes when you understand history and where you come from, that is really the first step to healing your money trauma. Again, thank you for watching another episode of That Property Roast, and I'll see you in the next few days.